Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Guy Paige, editor of the Vermont Daily Chronicle, and we're here for our first post-general election Friday at 4. And joining me in studio is Rob Roper of Behind the Lines.
Hey, Guy.
Great to have you here.
Great to be here.
We are joined on the phone by Paul Bean, our social media director, and running the board today is Raylene Meunier of 802 Scoop on Main Street in Barrie. Raylene, thank you so much for coming in here and helping us out.
You are most welcome. Glad to be here. Glad to help.
So, I'd say a lot has happened, right? Since November 5th. And we want to talk with a special focus on what happened in Vermont. Because as momentous as it's been nationally, boy, an awful lot has happened here in Vermont too. I wrote a headline early Wednesday morning at 12:16 a.m. that said, "We are now a purple state." And that's right. We've been used to thinking of Vermont as the blue state. Well, not so much anymore. I do want to thank our sponsors, Ranmar, out of Berlin. And if you want to contact us, if you want to join in on the chat, our Facebook page and our YouTube page, feel free to chime on in. Paul, is there anything you want to add about our social media?
If you're not already following, you should be. If you're not subscribed to the YouTube page, you can do that just by clicking subscribe right below if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're watching on Facebook, you should click the like button, which I hope you already did, and maybe you even shared it, but if not, you should. That's all. Okay,
thank you. If you have comments, write them down. I'll be looking at the Facebook page. And Paul, if you see so many on YouTube or any of the other platforms, sing out, and we will, because this really is, it's us here in studio, but really this is all of us. This is about all of us. So we want to talk about the election. We also want to talk about, frankly, Vermont's disingenuous media and how they contributed, really, to this, and how after the election some of them are kind of fessing up. Rob, what are your main thoughts about sort of the real takeaway from this election?
Well, the big takeaway, of course, is the Republicans finally sort of broke through with messaging. I think the big thing that woke everybody up was that property tax increase that they got right there around, what was it, August? I think the bill hit late July or August. You got your property tax bill, and we've been the frogs in the pot in Vermont for a long time, with the cost of living going up a little bit every year. I mean, not more than a little bit. I mean, people have felt the pain a little bit, but not enough to jump out of the pot. But that 14% on average, some communities, up around 40% property tax increase on a year over year, and that made the frogs jump out of the pot, I think. and that and the clean heat standard, I think, were the two big issues, because we did get the messaging out on what the clean heat standard is and was. It is a carbon tax on home heating fuel, and they just could not hide from the fact that it was going to be $1 at least. Some estimates putting it up at $4 a gallon, which if you're burning 500, 700 gallons of fuel every year, that's a lot of money. That's like a $2,000 tax every year just to survive winter coming down the pike. And people understood that was coming, and the fact that they had put this vote that had to take place in January really gave, I think, Republicans a very easy messaging strategy that they could use. Say, look, this vote coming up in January, who's going to go there and cast that ballot? Me or my opponent, who has, more than likely voted twice to pass the bill and twice to override Governor Scott's veto of it, I don't think you can trust that person to make the right choice for your financial security in the future. But I promise, I signed the pledge on Vermont Daily Chronicle's poll. How are you going to vote on the clean heat standard? I voted no. My opponent left it blank. So they were able to really make that clear distinction between what this person's going to do come January versus what I'm going to do come January. And that on top of you have people feeling the heat, the pain of a property tax increase, I think that was enough for people to say, we've had enough. We've had enough of the Democrat supermajority. They are not listening to us. They don't care what we think. You had that with the clean heat standard the year before when it was coming up for a vote. You had thousands of people emailing, calling, please don't do this. And they ignored all of those calls, all of those emails.
These are politicians. We know these folks. They're fairly smart people. Why'd they do that?
Well, because I think they've got a base that is rabid in its pursuit of a lot of these, like the climate agenda. And I think, they're in a bubble. They've created a bubble inside Montpelier. And, it's filled with stakeholders. I friggin' hate that term. It's a synonym for special interest. Whenever somebody says, we're going to convene a panel of the stakeholders and find out what they have to say, run for the hills, because it means that special interests are coming after your money and they don't care what you think. So they listen to the folks at the NEA and the Superintendent's Union and the Principals Association when it comes to education policy, and they listen to VPIRG and Energy Action Network and Conservation Law Foundation and Sierra Club, Renewable Energy Vermont, all those groups, Burlington Electric, Vermont Gas, that's who they listen to. And not, because they like them. I think they socialize with them. I think they're all sort of a peer group, and they all hang out together. And because they fund them. You look at who's donating to who and who's, endorsing whom in these elections, and that's who they VPIRG votes. VPIRG, the 501c4, has lobbyists in there telling them do this, but VPIRG votes, their PAC, is giving them money and endorsing them and telling their minions on the bicycles to say, hey, vote for this person. So that's the dynamic that they're living in. And I think you said that you want to talk a little bit about the media.
Yes.
I think that the media protects that bubble. And in fact, I just wrote a piece about this. There's sort of a not even a mea culpa, but it's just the media's like, well, oh my goodness, what happened? The Democrats are out of touch. Well, the media built the bubble around them.
That's right.
And crawled into it with them. Is what I think happened. And it's this sort of self-feeding. We're going to get away with it because we can lie about what the clean heat standard is. We can lie about what our role in the property tax situation is, and they're never going to call us on it.
Right.
They're going to let us get away with it. And if somebody does try to call us on it, they're going to be our Praetorian guard, as it were, and they're going to protect us from the people who are telling the truth, but they're going to slam those people. They're going to call it misinformation, and that broke. That system broke down in a big way.
How?
This time.
How did that break down?
It broke down, I think, because the property tax shock was so big that people started really paying attention.
Right.
And once they started really paying attention, and on the clean heat standard, folks like, I'll take a little credit for it, but you as well, you at Vermont Daily Chronicle, some of the alternative media out there, the Vermont fuel dealers really got involved in trying to educate their customers. And 80% of Vermonters heat with some sort of fossil fuel. So when the dealers are telling you, hey, this is going to affect your bill in a big way, it got people to start paying attention in a way that they haven't, that I've ever seen before. I mean, it's always us political junkies that are saying, oh my God, you got to pay attention to this bill because it's going to have an impact, but it's complicated and you don't understand it. But hey, they're going to tax your home heating fuel to save the planet. Well, how's that going to work? Vermont's going to save the planet how? And it's going to cost me what? You know, and then of course you had the interaction, the direct interaction when voters said, hey, we can't do this. We can't afford this. And we have to do it. We passed the global warming, like that's what the message from Chris Bray was. And a lot of the other senators.
Chris Bray, let's stop for a second.
Sure.
Chris Bray, for as long as you and I can remember really, has been the chair of the Senate Natural Resources and Energy Committee. So if there's
It's been a minute.
Yeah. If there's been a climate bill, an Act 250 bill, a hunting bill, a coyote bill, all got to go through his committee. And it never seems to come out well when it does.
No,
Good bills go to die, bad bills thrive.
Yeah. Oh no. I mean, he is a in the climate cult. I mean,
Right.
more than anybody else in that building, perhaps. Maybe a couple of the other people that were on that committee with him. Another one, Mark McDonald, who lost his seat
Right.
in this last election.
And what happened? What happened to Chris Bray? Senator Chris Bray.
Senator
Addison
Chris
County?
Bray lost his seat in Addison County. He was one of a couple of the incumbent senators who lost. I mean, the Republicans picked up 6 seats, but a lot of them were empty. They were, retirements, or Dick Sears passed away. Well, they didn't pick up the Sears seat, but Mazza had passed away. Kitchell had stepped down.
Bobby Starr.
Bobby Starr had
in
stepped down.
Orleans
So
County.
the Republicans did a really good job of picking up the empty seats, but there were a couple of incumbents who lost their seats, and they were Chris Bray and Mark McDonald of that Energy and Environment. Well,
Right.
it's the Natural Resources and Energy
That's
Committee in the
correct.
Senate. And the other one who's decided not to run, it wasn't a pickup for the Republicans on the seat, but was Dick McCormick. So that 5-member committee has been obliterated. It's,
Wow.
there are only 2 left. And I think a big reason, I mean, I don't have insight into why he stepped down, but I think that McCormick stepped down because he was getting a lot of heat for that clean heat standard.
I bet.
And he had a sort of that famous or infamous quote that I picked up, put it out there on video of him saying, about the January deadline for fuel dealers to file with the state under Act 18, and the fuel dealers are saying, please don't do this in January because that's our high season. We're trying to get fuel out to people, and if somebody's boiler blows out in the middle of winter, we've got to go and we've got to fix it. We can't be dealing with this paperwork. And McCormick said, well, we don't want people to get fuel. We want them to switch off fuel, so let's make it impossible for them to deliver.
Did he say that?
Oh yeah, he said that. He said it on
Wow.
videotape, and we sent that out there, and
Wow.
and he caught a lot of heat for, and deservedly so. He backed off and said, "Oh, I was just joking," but the joke made it into the bill because
Yeah.
that deadline stayed.
Yeah.
It took Matt Cota of the fuel dealers like a year and a half of lobbying. Please change this date, and they finally changed the date in a bill this last session to modify a couple things in Act 18.
Wow.
But it's just a study.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just a study.
I
And
know there
that
were
was the other
some-
lie. That was the other lie that they kept pushing.
One of the other members of that committee is Senator Ann Watson
Yeah.
of Washington County, who one of the things I love about doing the Chronicle is you meet people, you interact with people through the comments section, through emails, through seeing them on the street. And there's a guy, he's a retired Capitol police officer, and he should be writing his own column. He's as funny as you are, and as pointed as you are. He's really good, but he won't. Darn. But anyway, he wrote some emails to his senators saying, "So, are you going to back off of this clean heat standard thing?" And Senator Ann Watson, the member number 4 on that committee, who did not, she did
Who's
get
in line to now
reelected.
be the chair? She's now in line to be the chair.
I guess that's true. We'll
see
who
what
they
happens,
actually
but,
appoint. Yeah. But she said, I don't see them taking that up this year. just a
Yeah.
couple of days ago. So you have those that did survive, and Washington County, she was reelected with ease. They're all saying, not all saying, but a lot of them are saying, I don't think we're going to do it. Of course, they're saying that now.
Yeah, they'll get the arm twist.
Yes.
From the special from the stakeholders.
Yeah.
But you got to watch some of the weasel words, because I saw Senator Ann Cummings discuss that in your article,
that's
where
right.
she said, "I don't see it passing in its present form."
In its present
its
form.
present form.
Right.
So
Right.
so that means that they're thinking about passing it in another form. Well, any form that it passes in is going to increase your cost to heat your home.
Right.
So, my advice to the Republicans with their newfound numbers, they don't have majorities, but they've got a working minority in the Senate. 13 to 17. That means they just got to peel off 2 Democrats to join them, and then they get the 15th or the tie-breaking vote from the lieutenant governor. That means they can actually pass things. Republicans can actually pass things.
What sort of things do you think they're going to try to pass?
Well, one of the things I think they should pass is a full repeal of Act 18. They should just come in there and say, you know what? Nope, not at all, not in any form.
Right.
In fact, the form because that was one of the lies that I think people were exposed to, figured out, is the Democrats say, oh, it's just a study. It's just a study. It's not just a study. It sets up the bureaucracy to implement the program. All we were waiting on, and there was a study component to it. They did say, okay, in order to inform the rulemaking process, which they're going to supposedly vote on in January or at some point, or they don't have to vote on it, but that's the vote that everybody's talking about. But that was the only component that it was not done. It's like we bought the car, and we're just determining the rules of the road of how this car is going to be driven with Act 18. So it wasn't just a study. But, if I were the Republicans, you said it was just a study. For the last 6 months, you've been saying it's just a study. Well, here's the study. It came back in January. Here's the study. We don't need the bill anymore, right? Because study's done. No harm, no foul. Let's just show the voters of Vermont that we heard you about the clean heat standard. We're going to repeal Act 18. And if they say, oh, well, we can't really do that, that'll be very telling.
But who will be telling it?
Well, I think,
I'll
certainly be all over that on my column and behind the lines.
Let me ask you about your column.
Yeah.
You call it Behind the Lines.
Yep.
Yeah. And how did you start it, and how's it growing?
Well, I started it. I had been with the Ethan Allen Institute for almost 10 years, and I took a little time off, and was basically still writing for them on occasion, because I stayed on the board for about a year after I was done, and would still write a once a month column for the Ethan Allen Institute that would get sent out to all the papers, and some would pick them up, and some wouldn't. And and we were talking about the Clean Heat Standard, the Global Warming Solutions Act was just coming online, and I had written 2 or 3 articles in a row about it. And
Why?
Because it was important. I mean, they're saying we're going to this is going to save the planet, transform our economy, switch us from fossil fuels to electric. So we're supposed to remake our energy, how we use remake our economy, and save the planet, and it's going to cost billions of dollars. So I thought it warranted some attention. Somebody should be out there trying to explain to the public, what is this thing that's coming down the pike? And in fact, it was June Tierney, who's Secretary of Department of
Department of Public Service.
Yeah. She had said this is a Mack truck. She described it at the time as a Mack truck coming down at the people of Vermont. And I was like, well, if a Mack truck is coming down, somebody should be explaining to people what this Mack truck is. And nobody in the media was doing it.
Yeah.
Nobody. And so I'd written a couple articles, and then I got a email back after I'd submitted my 3rd one in a row on this topic from one of the editors at one of the online papers. There's only one, so you can guess which one it was. And the line was, hey, why don't you write about something else? Because this was election time. This was coming up going into the election, and I was trying to warn people, you better think about who you send to Montpelier, because they're driving the Mack truck
Yep.
and they're aiming it at you. And it was, don't write about this anymore. And it was couched sort of in the language of, yeah, shake it up a little bit, write about something else. People are, you don't want to get in a rut. And I sent an email back to him and I said, hey, don't you think, as important as this issue is, that somebody should be trying to explain it to the people of the state? In fact, you guys have all the resources. Why don't you have a reporter on this full time, dedicated to, because you've got committee hearings that are going on in this. You had the Vermont Climate Council. They've got their meetings, and all their committee meetings are talking about this. There's plenty of material. Why aren't you guys writing something about this every week? And I never got a return.
Imagine that.
Nothing. Not even we'll take that under advisement.
Right.
It was just ghost.
Yeah.
So that was sort of my moment of, if not you, then who?
Wow.
And I said, you know what? I'm in a position where I can do this, so I'm going to do it. And I started behind the
lines. So the
lines.
dominant media, basically, they made their decision.
Yeah.
We're not going to cover this.
Yeah.
And if we do, it's going to be rah, 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 clean heat standard.
Yep.
And so you said, look, human nature abhors a vacuum here, and a vacuum of information. Time to provide some information that needs to be told. Because they weren't doing the job, you did, and you've stepped up. How's your readership doing?
It's good. I mean, it's growing. I don't really have put a lot of marketing behind it, except doing stuff like this. But I get, I topped out at about 20,000 views per month.
Wow. Not bad, Rob.
And
this
some of
is
that's
like Substack or something?
Yeah,
or?
this is on Substack.
Okay.
It's robertroper.substack.com. If anybody wants to sign up, the name of it is Behind the Lines, Rob Roper on Vermont
Cost anything?
Politics. No, I allow it to go forward for free. I don't think I've ever left anything behind a paywall.
Yeah.
I do ask for paid subscribers, or the only ones that are allowed to comment, because I have to have some incentive. In order to do it, and it does help.
thought.
I mean, it does. I want to get the information out, but it does help if you pay to subscribe, just because I put a lot of time and effort into it. And when my wife says, "Why are you putting all this time and effort into this?" I get to point to these numbers.
Honey, I'm trying to get subscribers here.
I say, people are paying me to do this, so
Right.
that's why I spend a lot of time on it. So I do really appreciate the paid subscribers, and it's a good amount. A good percentage of the people do value what I do, and I'm very grateful for them.
Well, I know, I got to say, the number one name I've heard brought up as to, in terms of media, what was the catalyst for a lot of this change, especially with the clean heat standard? It was not the Chronicle, it was you, it's Behind the Lines. And of course, it's all working together. We help you, you help us, fine.
Yeah, I write
still.
stuff. I'm sure I get probably as much circulation through Chronicle stories, and our friend Dave Sulias has started up FYIVT
yes.
again down in the southern part of the state.
Has he ever?
In the Brandon area, he's doing a good job with that. And
Yes.
and there are like our friend Bill Huff and
Yes.
Mike Tagliavia, the representative-elect Mike Tagliavia.
How about that?
I should say, have their radio show that they do out of the Randolph area. So there's a lot of opportunities out there for people to have an impact, because the Vermont media is not doing a good job, and part of it is their fault.
That's right.
Part of it is their fault. Part of it's not their fault, because papers around the country are having a hard time.
Mm-hmm.
They really are. I mean, you look at it. You used to have at the Burlington Free Press, they had 2 Capitol reporters. They had Nancy Remsen and Terry Hallenbeck, and they were good.
Yes.
They were good reporters. Now they don't have any.
No.
And the Times Argus and Rutland Herald used to have the Vermont. What did they call
Vermont
it?
Press Bureau.
Yeah, the Vermont Press
Yeah,
Bureau.
not so much.
And that was 3 reporters that they had, and that's not there anymore.
Right.
So you don't have all those, and there's a lot of papers that don't
Yeah.
do a lot of reporting anymore. And
I don't know if you heard, but the longtime editor of the Burlington Free Press, Aki Soga, just retired.
yeah, no, I did see that. I
Yeah.
saw Aki Soga retired, but the Free Press hasn't done any real reporting in a long, long time.
You know, when you print in Portsmouth, New Hampshire,
Uh-huh.
it's kind of hard to have your finger on the pulse, you know, and to get the paper to people
So
in a hurry.
So that's the part that's not their fault. I think the part that is their fault is they really are. I think, you know, as I said, they built the bubble. Our politicians in
Right.
Vermont, our left-wing politicians in Vermont, live in a bubble, and that bubble was created by the press.
Right.
They built it around them because I think that they want to be the movers and shakers who determine the policy, not the elected officials.
Wow.
And you get a lot of young reporters who, quite frankly, don't know the subjects very well that they're reporting on. And they certainly don't have a whole lot of life experience that they bring to the stories. And they're activists. They're activists, idealists, out of college.
Right.
And yeah, they're there to save the planet just as much as the young legislators that get in there.
Yeah.
And they're not there to work for the readership. And that's another dynamic that we have with the local papers not being anymore. These people are look at the Vermont Journalism Trust that runs Vermont Digger, for example. Mm-hmm. It's run by Gay Symington, the former Democrat Speaker of the House, is their board chair. Look who's the editor of Vermont Digger. It's Paul Hines, who used to be Peter Welch's press secretary
Right.
when Welch was in the Congress.
Right.
You look at a lot of the people that are on the board there, and there are
So what's
special
your point,
interests.
Rob?
There are special interests there. So you know, who's the customer of the news that they're reporting? Is it you, the person who's reading it, or is it the stakeholders?
And who pays the
You know?
pays the bills?
Yeah, and that's who's paying the bills. So that's the dynamic at work. And you know, are they to blame for that? Maybe, maybe not. But that's the reality that you're dealing with.
When I worked for the St. Albans Messenger, we had to pay a lot of attention to what the businesses on Main Street thought,
Yeah.
and to the subscribers, the actual real paid subscribers. Because if we didn't, subscribers angrily canceled their subscriptions, and advertisers angrily pulled their ads.
Uh-huh.
So you had a built-in listening ear to what was going on. Really, almost every day, the publisher had to say, okay, not necessarily taking their cue from, but boy, always listening to and respecting the wishes of their readers and their advertisers.
Yep.
And that's not a bad way to do it.
No, it's not. And there'll always be those biases that creep. Because what people will say about that is, well, you know, there's the business on Main Street doesn't want the story written about such and such a thing that happened that, quite frankly, the public might need to know.
Right.
So those things are always going to creep in there.
Sure. So before we talk more about the media, Paul, I'm wondering if you have any comments any online comments that need to be mentioned.
At this time, I do not, Guy. I'm looking at all across all platforms, and I cannot see any at this moment.
Okay. I do see on Facebook Judy Taranovich chiming in. She said, saw that article. I think it was the one that on the Clean Eat Standard, and agree, Rob. Judy is the, I believe, still the president of the Vermont Fuel Dealers, and has been and it operates a fuel business in Rutland County. So one of the things that I find fascinating is that in the derelict desertion of duty of the Vermont media, the way I was trained to be a reporter, stuff just comes up because there's a need. For example, over in Caledonia County, in St. Johnsbury, there is a drag queen story hour going to be at the library over there. And, you know, whatever you think about drag queen story hour, the fact is there was a national platform that just absolutely canceled a protest petition against that. So they were just like shut out. The other side wasn't shut out. They could have all the petitions they want. But they opposed Drag Queen Story Hour, and boom, no petition for you, no soup for you. So what do? They find another platform, and they have started now their own small local media. And they're not just talking about Drag Queen Story Hour. They're also talking about the arrest of a St. J police sergeant, who got in a scuffle with a 30-time serial criminal and is now under arrest. Now, which may be merited that he was arrested, but the fact is, these folks are talking about it from a different point of view. And I don't think this is going to be the last thing they do. I think they're going to pick up audiences, and they're going to grow.
Well, I hope they do, and that's what I think you're going to find a lot more reliable news coming out of things like Vermont Daily Chronicle, things like this thing that's happening up in St. Johnsbury. I haven't seen it, so I don't want to vouch for it. But what I would say to anybody that's thinking about doing this is, A, do it, but also don't fall into the same trap that the other side has fallen into, I think, which is just taking one side of an issue and pushing just one side of an issue and becoming a propagandist as opposed to somebody who wants to really get to the nub of an issue. I mean, I certainly have a perspective. I have a very free market perspective in the way I cover things. But when I cover them, I say, look, this is what I think, but this is why I think it. And this is the study that just came out on the clean heat standard or the renewable energy standard or on property taxes. This is what they're saying about it. This is what I think it really means. I think this is what the implication is for you. And by the way, here's some video of what they actually said. So it's where I have an opinion, I want people to know that it's an informed opinion. And where I'm saying this is the facts, I want to show the receipts for what the facts are.
Right.
And that way, it does allow people to form their own opinion. That's what drives me crazy. You read a lot of articles, and there's like no links to the original source subjects of things.
Something my reporters often get their stories sent back to them saying, you just made an assertion here, but I don't see a link to that report that you're citing. Yeah. Yes. Speaking of starting your own media, Raylene, tell us more about what you're doing here at 802 Scoop and how someone wanted to become their own media, how they could do that here.
Well, they need to do is reach out, and we would love to have more people join. It's all about getting the word out, no matter what that word is. Come in, share the space, and use the equipment. And I mean, the opportunities are actually endless when it comes to what you can do on social media with just this little bit of equipment. And we invite anybody. That's the goal for me was to give people a place where they could they didn't have to necessarily have all of this stuff themselves, because that's a lot sometimes. So that we would join a space and we would become like one big studio where different people could come in. Maybe at some point in time we'll have other studios set up in here where people would rather have their own equipment, and there's certainly spaces and room to make that happen. And but I started out as a producer, actually in sales for another podcast, and then produced for 4 years, and decided to go out on my own and do it. And I do have my own show, It's No Secret, on Tuesdays. I co-host with Michael Booten on Monday nights for Barry Beat. Yeah. And then on Thursdays is also my show called The Weekly Wrap, and that really is all about what has gone on in our community, Central Vermont, throughout the week, and all of the community events that will be happening in the weekend to come and in the week to come. It's a lot to keep track of sometimes. But in some things super important, like Veggie Van Gogh is really important to a lot of people to know that it's a different week this time because of Thanksgiving and how things fall. So it's good to get out that word.
Veggie Van Gogh?
Yes.
What's that?
It is It's a van that a caravan of vans through the Vermont Food Bank, and they give vegetables, dairy products, all kinds of different things to families in need. No questions asked, no application, nothing. You just most people are referred by their physician or their kid's pediatrician, and you just drive up to the auditorium one Friday a month, drive around to the back. You don't get out of your car, anything, and tell them how many people are in your family. You pop the trunk,
Wow.
they put it in there, and you go home.
Wow.
And it
So-
really helps a lot. It helps a lot of people.
So if someone wanted to come in and do their own podcast here with this terrific setup you have,
Well, thank you. Thank you.
how would they
like
do
it.
that? How do they contact
They
you?
would could contact me on 802 Scoop. They could message through 802 Scoop, the Facebook page.
Okay.
That's probably the best way.
Yeah.
To get in touch. And I mean, people could call me as well if they wanted to, which is 802-505-8093. And we would really love to have more. And the hope is that soon we will be doing some podcasts in front of a live audience. So
Wow.
yeah, I think that would be a lot of fun for a lot of different reasons. And so we'll see.
You know, I think about podcasts and how Joe Rogan, for example, everyone mentions, he said that he was doing his podcast every day for like 5 years before anything really happened.
Yeah.
And then it took off, and what, 60 million views with this Trump interview? Something like that. Wow.
And that's exactly what happens. I mean, it doesn't. You can go along for months and months and months, even years, and have next to nothing, and all of a sudden, really, I mean, the floods of 23 took it to a whole new level for a lot of local podcasters who were boots on the ground, let's say, and they were the only people that were, because if you turn on some of the local stations, they have no idea what's happening. They're talking about movie stars and country music singers and babies being born. They don't, because it's all tracked. They're all they're from all over the United States.
Right.
And so really the podcast is instant. If there's something happening, you can come down here, unlock the door, jump on a mic, and you're live in seconds, and can be bringing anybody, just like you all were for election night. Wow. But when it's an emergency, it really makes a difference, I think, to be able to get that information to people immediately.
Right. Wow. And you can become your own media. And I first heard that term about 10 years ago. There was this guy who was trying to something works, freedom works. Some guy named Rob Roper was talking about how important it is that we can all become our own media. And that just always really stuck with me.
Yeah.
So we got another comment from Judy Taranovich. Thank you. She wrote, I spoke with a reporter from Vermont Public Radio, and I said to him, if as children we were given a box of Crayola crayons with only blue crayons in the box, we would never know there were other colors. This is what the media has done to us. They have not shown us their other viewpoints or other sides of the story. Vermonters need to know and deserve to hear all information from both sides to make an educated decision, and that was denied us over the past 2 years. And I have often thought that the Vermont Daily Chronicle shouldn't even exist. There should be no reason for it, because there would be reporters out there who are just going about their business, covering both sides and asking all the tough questions. one of my favorite reporters for the Chronicle is a guy named Mike Donahue, who was a longtime Free Press reporter, and he is just the captain of asking the uncomfortable question, and when they don't answer it, he just sits there and asks it again until he gets an answer. And frankly, he's a lot better at it than I am. I'm much too nice sometimes. But you need to do that, and that's our job. And it doesn't matter who you're talking to. Paul, speaking of which, Paul, do we have you on the line?
No, we just lost him. I think your phone
Just died?
may have. Yep.
Well, that's good timing, but that's the story of my life. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, one of the other things that at the governor's press conference that came up was the discussion of one of the first questions that was asked is, so with Donald Trump as president, and if he, as promised, comes after illegal immigrants around the country, and including in Vermont, how's Vermont going to respond to that? And the press was very, the other two reporters there were very assertive on that. And the governor basically said, well, we'll wait and see what he actually does, but we're not going to respond to the rhetoric. We're going to respond to an actual plan. So I was going to ask Paul to kind of, because he wrote a terrific story in the Chronicle this morning, in Vermont Daily Chronicle this morning. Paul, if you want to sort of, if you want to kind of chime in on some of that, on comments, or if we can reestablish phone contact with you because we've lost it temporarily, love to have you speak more about that. So do you think they're actually going to like kind of give up on all the climate stuff, or just because how many carbon taxes have they had now? It seems that every few years there's another one.
Here's what Vermonters need to be very wary of is the Clean Heat Standard wasn't just a study, and it's not a standalone bill. It is an outgrowth of the Global Warming Solutions Act. So even if they repeal Act 18, which I think they should, Act 18, Clean Heat Standard, was basically how we meet the mandated greenhouse gas reductions that were established under the Global Warming Solutions Act. We've got goals in 2025, 2030, 2050. Clean Heat Standard was how we're going to meet the 2025, 2030, 2050 goals for the home heating sector of the economy. So even if Act 18 goes away, you still got those 2025, 2030, 2050. So one of the things that I think Republicans need to do with their newfound numbers is say, okay, we're going to repeal Act 18, it's gone. The other thing we're going to do is we are going to get rid of the lawsuit provision of the Global Warming Solutions Act that says anybody can sue us if we don't meet these goals, because we ain't meeting them.
Yeah.
The first goal is January 1st, 2025, which is like 45 days from now.
They've already promised to sue.
We're already being sued.
Yeah,
The Conservation Law Foundation has already leveled its first suit, and it's not that, hey, you missed it, you missed the first deadline. It's like, we don't agree with the yardstick you're using to measure greenhouse gas reduction for this, and we also don't think that you did another aspect of the law in regard to public outreach in accordance with how the law was done. So if you those are the lawsuits that are coming, you're going to be sued for everything.
Right.
Everything you do they don't agree with, they're going to come back with a lawsuit. And we, the taxpayers, have to pay to defend that lawsuit. And if they win or we settle, then the judge can award them their attorney's fees at our expense. So we get paid for both sides of this. We have to pay as taxpayers for both sides of these lawsuits. It's crazy. It's going to cost us tens of millions of dollars. That is just a waste. It is just a waste. It's pouring our money into the pockets of these special interest lawyers for no appreciable benefit at all for Vermont. So that needs to be repealed. And I saw Governor Scott, I think it was in his press conference, say that they want to push the dates back as well in the Global Warming Solutions Act. So it's not going to be 2025, 2030. It's going to be something a little bit more realistic. So I think that would be a good legislative package for Republicans to push. We're going to repeal Act 18. We're going to get rid of the lawsuit provision of the Global Warming Solutions Act, and we're going to recalibrate the goals of the Global Warming Solutions Act to make them more realistic, and to, we know what we can do, and on a timeline that we can do it that's not going to break the bank.
Don Koch, who ran for state senate here in Washington County, writes, and the Conservation Law Foundation is one of the groups lobbying for this crap.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yes, that's right.
Well, I mean, I showed you the video. I mean, I not only have my column on Substack, but I also have a YouTube page for Behind the Lines where I rip the video from a lot of these things, and I have the testimony of when Conservation Law Foundation was in there talking about this, and Becca White, Senator Becca White, who's one of the two remaining members of that committee, who's
that's right.
still there. You're going to sue us, right? Please? I mean, she was begging him.
Thumbs up.
And they all were. Her and Ann Watson and Mark McDonald, they were all out there saying, we put this provision in there so you would take advantage of it. Yeah, I know that, right? You're going to sue us, right? And of course, CLF was, yes, yes, we're keeping all of our options on the table. And yes,
One of the even weirder things there is that the Democrats ran in a Rutland City House District against Chris Howland, one of the Conservation Law Foundation lawyers.
Yeah, one of their attorneys.
And Taddeo did not win. Chris Howland took that seat. But an awful lot of you talk about, gee, let's consult with our stakeholders. Oh, wait a minute, I'm the lawyer for one of the stakeholders.
And again, I want to talk about people waking up and Right for Vermont PAC, which is a PAC that is headed up by Deb Bilodeau, the former chair of the Vermont Republican Party.
I don't know about this.
You probably do, because they put out memes with the voting records of the Democrats under the. I mean, it was under the GOP. They were coordinating with that.
Oh, that was terrific.
So yes, and they got the word on Anya Taddeo and put one out. Hey, she doesn't want to serve you. She wants to sue you. Yeah, is what it said. But no, I think that that was a big part of it. Bill Huff and his Get Real campaign started in January. Yeah, started sort of getting people involved, having a positive message, and got Republicans to start to organize around that. That's right. And then the Right for Vermont PAC started coming out with, hey, this is how they're voting. Yeah. In your name, they voted for the clean heat standard. They voted to give themselves a pay raise. That was something that really ticked everybody off. They voted for the higher electric bills. They voted for like 6 or 7 different bills that they highlighted in those. And
DMV fees.
The DMV fees. And I think that's a big reason why Sam Douglas was able to beat Catherine Sims, who outraised him. She raised something like $50,000 or $60,000 for a single seat Senate race, and Sam did pretty well. I think he raised over $30,000, but he was outspent, not quite 2 to 1, but he was able to win that seat. Because he ran a great campaign. He ran a great campaign, but Catherine Sims' voting record was out there for everybody to see, and she's out there saying, "I'm for you, and I'm for the kingdom." Well,
she wasn't.
This isn't for the kingdom. The clean heat standard is not for the kingdom. You voted for the property tax increases on 2 occasions, and then
after she declared for Senate, suddenly
after you declared for Senate, you voted a little different way. But so people became aware of that, and I think and a lot of those races, I think that information that was blasted out on social media, that for just people to see and people to share.
That's right.
They were able to know that nice lady who remembers your name on town meeting day and is passing out cookies and saying, what a great job we're doing in Montpelier on your behalf. Well, that lady actually is voting for all of this stuff. Right. And people started to see that in a way this time that they'd never made those connections before.
They call us the media, and there's this thought that we tell them what's going on. Actually, what all the media is we are a medium for one person to talk to another person. And when someone comes into 802 Studios, Scoop Studios here, and they sit down and do a podcast and people are watching, that's a medium. when you put out a column, that's a medium. And then especially like what you were just saying, Rob, when people share that through the wonders of social media. It used to be when I published a newspaper, I was happy when I saw a copy of the Colchester Chronicle sitting around a break room somewhere or at a restaurant because someone else might pick it up and read it. Well. When these things go viral, it's hundreds, thousands of views.
And you know, you've been saying over and over today, you know, you can be your own media. You can also be your own distribution.
Yeah.
Not for us, you know, from my standpoint, please share.
Right.
Please share this stuff because that's how it gets out. I mean, you can connect with thousands of people on social media if you've got a Facebook account or a Twitter account or Instagram, all of those things. I mean, you, the reader, are empowered by this as well. And you know, the left, I think, has been very good about that for over year after year after year. And I think that those of us on the center right are starting to get better at sharing. I know most people, it's like, just leave me alone. I don't want you know, politics is a personal thing. You don't get in anybody's face, and I don't want to hear what your positions are, and you don't want to hear what my positions are. I respect that perspective, but it's not how you win.
I just got a tax bill. Suddenly, everything changes.
So everybody needs to know.
So let me ask you to be the devil's advocate here. So here, the Democrats have this problem, which we've spent the last 50 minutes discussing. What should they do so that they don't lose even more seats, and more importantly, so that they do right by the voters of Vermont?
Well, they're in a real jam. I think they're stuck between a rock and a hard place because they do have a very rabid activist base that is all in for whatever it takes to save the planet. You know, and we're not saving the planet here in Vermont, but they think that it's important that we do these things, no matter what the cost. It's going to cost you an extra $2,000 a year to heat your home. Well, so be it. That's what we need to do to save the planet. You can't afford an electric car? Well, tough, because we're banning internal combustion engine sales as of 2035.
Which we are.
You can't afford your electric bill? Well, tough, because we want renewable energy. And even if it's more expensive, we're going to force the utilities to pay for it, and that's going to get passed on to you.
Are they trying to get rid of us? Are they trying to get rid of lower middle-income Vermonters?
I don't know if they're trying to, because they need those lower middle-income professional workers to be in the state in order to install the cold climate heat pumps. They need They need the skilled people to do the weatherization jobs, and the carpenters, the plumbers, the electricians, and those are the people who are leaving, and aren't, or they're retiring and not being replaced because they can't afford. You can't afford to have a job like that and live here. So they're shooting themselves in the foot. So I don't know if that's what they're conscious. We don't. I think there are some people that would actually like to see Vermont's population shrink back to about 300,000, but I don't think that's what most of them think. I think they're just religious ideologues that this is their religion now. This is how they find their self-worth. This is where their moral compass is, and they want whatever it takes to do to save the planet. And you've got people, like the Palestinian thing that's happening right now. You see that rabid group. That rabid group is out there, and then you've got a lot of special interests. The biggest employers in the state are like the state, and the schools, the public school system, and the hospital system, they're all quasi-government operations. So they're all out there saying, no, we want more money.
Right. Are they ever?
We want more money for the schools. We want more money for the hospitals. We want more money for state government. And those are big special interest groups that are lobbying for more. It's not like there's like the 180 legislators out there, and the rest of us voters, there's 315,000 people who pay taxes in the state. It's a lot of those 315,000 people who pay taxes in the state. 20,000 of them are in the public school system, and 15,000 or 12,000 are in the municipal state government, and then a huge number in the hospital system, and they're all out there advocating for higher taxes. So it's a fight.
So Rob, as we wrap up here, we've just got a few more minutes. I've got to wonder, you know, Elon Musk has his Department of Governmental Efficiency that he's working on to cut $2 trillion out of the federal government. And which often we would laugh at, except that this is Elon Musk who does unthinkable things over and over and over again. So what I wonder is, could anyone start a Vermont chapter of the Department of Government Efficiency? You know, to basically say, here's how we could do this for 80% of the dough.
They really need to do that. And you know, we're talking about property taxes. This is where you see that problem. What the voters said is, do not raise our property taxes. And that's another thing I would tell Republicans to do, is they need to put a bill out there that caps individual property taxes or freezes them, at least until this idiotic commission that they put together comes up with a long-term plan. They need to freeze property taxes at the level that they're at, so nobody loses their home. We've seen people lose their home, and then whatever, you know, we're still going to vote locally on our bills. So they get all of the sales tax. They get 33% of the sales and the purchase and use tax. They get 25%, I think, of the rooms and meals tax. They get all of the new $20 million a year cloud tax they just passed. They get all of the surcharge on the Airbnbs that they just passed. There's all those revenue streams are going to the education fund. So cap property taxes, and then whatever the delta is between all that revenue coming in and what the budgets actually are has to come out of the general fund. And that will force them to do two things. Reform the way we currently do education, because it'll put a lot of pressure on reforming education. And because, okay, well, this project has to go, that project has to go if we're going to pay for this thing over here that the voters already said that they wanted to do. That's going to start cutting.
So is
back
Emily
on our own
Kornheiser
government.
of the House Ways and Means Committee chair, is she going to go for something like that?
No.
So what
I
has
don't
to
think
happen?
so. Well, we got another election, 2026. But you know, but voters do need to start speaking up. They need to start saying no more property taxes, because they're going to say, oh well, you know, we can't do anything about it. It's
Which is what they said last time.
Which is what they said last time, and they've put this commission together, which is made up of all the stakeholders.
That's
and
right.
I told you what stakeholder means. We've defined that term.
That's very true.
And they've got the majority votes on that committee. There's nobody advocating for real reform. It's like, it's the future of Vermont education. It's become a wish list for what the special interests want.
Right.
So it's going to be the voters. The voters have to speak up. You have to pay attention. You have to be vocal and say, look,
And
no more property taxes.
Their next bite at the apple is in March, is a town meeting. Now, Governor Scott did say December 1st, he puts his letter out. This is how I see the property tax going letter. And very good chance it's going to be double digits again.
Yeah, and that can't happen.
Right.
That cannot be allowed to happen.
We may be looking at town meeting 2.0, where voters say, I'm here, no. Or not, maybe they won't. I guess we'll find out. So Rob, thank you very much.
Oh,
for
thank you,
coming
Guy.
on.
This was fun.
Not the last time.
No.
Raylene, thank you very much.
Well, thanks for having me and join in with you all.
Well, this has been great. So thank you also to our sponsor, Randmark Corp., Builders and Excavators. And this has been Friday at 4. And we will see you again next week. By then, we will have Paul being available, certainly, at least by Zoom. Another new member of the Vermont House of Representatives, who also happens to run stuff in the studio, Mike O'Booten. So it's Mike Tagliavia and Mike O'Booten, both in the sort of new media, represented to the Vermont House. Perhaps not a coincidence.
Perhaps not.
Yeah. So thank you all very much, and have a great weekend.